I'm going to do two parts to the videos for this lab. The first one's going to cover how to transfer data over to a Google spreadsheet, graph it, and check to make sure that the graph is the right type, the x-axis is the correct line, the y-axis are correct, okay? Because a couple of people had issues with that on the lab test. The second part of the video, which is a later part of the lab, is going to go over cell referencing, okay, which some people are comfortable with and some people aren't, right? So these videos are optional if you're already very comfortable with spreadsheets, okay? So if you've got your data typed in, I would strongly recommend that you copy it and paste it into a spreadsheet. Every time you copy some data in, you have this is one of the few cases where I would say human error, where you make mistakes, right? So you want to have fewer cases of trying to copy and type in values as you can. So you're going to copy and paste it instead. So you'd select your data that you've typed in. This is fake data. It's not what yours looks like in your lab. Yours is using different variables and units, but you'd copy it over and then go over to a sample spreadsheet. Now, you don't have to copy it in box 1. You can pick wherever you like. I'll put it in row 2, okay? And then you want to paste it. So there are some special treatments in terms of going into format or formula or something like that, and those can work in other conditions, but for a straight copy and paste from a document, often just the regular paste will work, okay? And again, you can do Control V as well, okay? So you paste that. Okay, looks like the copy didn't work. So if that's an example of where the copy didn't work. So let's go back over here and I'll do copy again, and we'll go directly into paste. There we go. Okay. So if you had a subscript over here, so say you had this nicely set up and you highlighted it and you put a subscript, control comma on my thing, right? And then you copied that. Okay, often when you copy things, I'll just go this way just to make sure it's doing properly, and you paste it, the formatting tends to get messed up. Okay, so there was a case where I had nice formatting in my Google Doc, but it didn't copy and paste over, right? So formatting like superscripts and subscripts often don't paste over, but if need be, what you can do is just go into it and put an underscore. And what the underscore does is it just says the thing after that is a subscript. Now, in doing all this, I ended up messing up one of the field borders, right? Because it was trying to copy something that didn't have a field border, okay? So generally speaking with spreadsheets, you don't necessarily need the borders, so I can select over here and get rid of them, okay? I don't have to do this, it's just visually, I'm just gonna get rid of it so it's less messed up later. Okay, so you've got your copied values, you've got your y-axis values. Yours might have just one data set or 2 or 3, but if you put copy over, the first column is assumed to be a x-axis value, a set of values, and then if you have multiple columns, it's going to create different sets of data. If you have just one column after that, it's just going to apply one y-axis. So if you go and insert the chart, what you want to do is you want to make sure that we're going to use a scatter plot. Then if your data is slightly out of order, it won't matter. If you have, and you don't want to use a data column chart for this purpose, okay? So you can see I just created some nice randomized, fairly linear data, okay? So when you've got it, you can have some things. So what you'll see here is it did port in the x-axis title, but not the y-axis, and that's because there's multiple different columns, right? But you can go in and you can customize and change the formatting for the title on the top and the title on the y-axis as needed, okay? But what I want to talk about here is just how to check that your x-axis is actually correct, okay? So when you're looking in here and you're in the setup, I'm in a scatter type, that's fine, but it also gives me information of what is it using on the x-axis, okay? So maybe you actually had it set up and you only selected the y-axis. You can see here visually you might not see much of a difference, and that's because the data that I picked was fairly linearly distributed. So what's happening here is the graph is actually plotting it of your first data point versus 1. first, second data point versus 2. So it's not showing an index, but basically it's equally spaced. So the spaces in between here are very equal. And it's not plotting it against your x-axis, okay? So if you see that your x-axis is missing, or your x-axis part of listed of what's on the y-axis, so say I want to add a series, and I put time in there. So this is time versus here, right? But you can check, and you want to make sure, because this was one of the ones that I picked before, I can go in and I can select time again. So you'll see that there's actually one data set, this one here, number 4, which is actually time versus time. But we don't need that, right? We don't want that we don't want to have time as one of our values. So you want to remove that if it ends up being selected a couple of times. That can happen when you select and maybe go into more than one chart style. But we want time on our x-axis, and in this case distance on the y-axis, and you can update all the titles and stuff. So that's how you can check that the x and the y-axes are set up correctly. If, however, you go in and you see that there's nothing on the x-axis, maybe you forgot to select the x-axis, and you click on here and you're not seeing it, you should be able to see there's a little box right there, okay? And that allows you to basically go back to the spreadsheet, right? And okay, so we're going to select a range, and that one you can see by the highlighted values, it was column A, it started in number 2 and it went to number 10. So I'm going to go A2 to A10. Okay, in between I put a colon, that's basically saying start here, go to here. Okay, and it's got some nice values in now, right? And so it's picking, and oh, it picked up that it's actually the time. Okay, so that's how you can check the x and the y axes are set up correctly. Okay, so that's pretty much it. In previous labs, we've covered how to customize, how to change things in terms of adding trend lines and equations. Not so much done in this lab, but you can add them if you want to. One of the things you can do is you can customize different points, right? One of the things you could do is you could set it to a lower opacity, which you might want to do in this lab, but you don't have to. And you can change the color, so you might want to go into this one here, and if you wanted to, you could actually make them all the same color, right? Or a different spectrum of colors. It's up to you, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this video here, and in part 2 I'm going to cover cell referencing and calculating values based on your previous values. Hit the wrong button there. We'll stop right there.